London is home to 8.8 million people or thereabouts. I didn't actually count them all. Plus, you've got another 16 million tourists that visit the city in a given year. And a lot of those people are captivated by all of the shopping that London has to offer. So today I want to know what is new in London retail real estate. To find out, I'm going to talk with Mark Smith. He has 25 years working in the London retail market. So let's just get right into it. It's time for everything we know about retail. This is the show where we tell all of you everything we know about retail and real estate. We broadcast live on LinkedIn. We're live as well on YouTube. It's a simulcast, but you don't have to watch us live. You can watch us on the internet anytime you want. Head on over to everythingweknow.show. Not only all of our live shows, but we have a bunch of other cool retail research and retail tour videos that you can check out. So my name is James Cook. I research retail and real estate for JLL in the USA. And let's just get into it. Let's meet Mark Smith. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, James.
So, Mark, you are joining us live from London, and you lead the cross-border retail team in Europe for JLL. Did I get that right?
You got that right. It's a little bit wordy, that title, but yeah, essentially you nailed it there. Yeah. Yeah.
So you're helping brands cross borders. So oftentimes they want to come and cross a border and come to the UK and specifically open up stores in London, right?
Yeah, that's right. Often London is the first port of call for new brands coming into the region. So yeah, that's we're often there at the beginning to help clients on their journey, expanding their retail footprints across EMEA.
I love it. So let's talk the popular streets. What are the highest of the high streets that folks want to go to shop at and open stores at in London?
Well, there's a lot to cover here. So, but I'll zoom out for a moment and just give you a kind of a high level summary, and then we can like dive into it. If that's okay.
Sounds great. Yeah.
So, if we talk about central London, and the three kind of key retailing locations, if you like, trade areas. So Knightsbridge and Chelsea, Covent Garden, and then by far the biggest being London's West End, including Mayfair. So those are the three areas. There's no way long enough today for us to get into all those kind of individual locations and streets. So for a moment, maybe we'll talk about London's West End. So in terms of locations, key streets, Oxford Street, Bond Street, Regent Street. The West End alone has over 80 kind of key streets in and around those locations. So Oxford Street, known as the nation's high street, best of British, lots of flagship brands, British brands. Regent Street, home of international flagship stores, and then of course the world-renowned Bond Street, home to all our luxury brands, the main luxury destination in London.
And how would you just, in general, how would you describe the state of retail real estate on those streets? I mean, rents, occupancies, where are those kinds of things at?
Well, I have to say, we are as busy now as we've been in several years. That won't surprise you, but certainly it's bounced back very strongly post-COVID. I think we went through the sort of slight reluctance to invest during Brexit, quickly followed by COVID, and then coming out the other side, we've seen a real bounce. A huge amount of activity, certainly centrally. So we're in it's quite an active period for us at the moment, and lots of deals taking place right across the West End.
Are retailers finding good deals in terms of rental rates, or are they really having to pay pay a lot to be at these locations?
Well, it's interesting, James. If we were walking the street this afternoon, we'd be walking around those kind of locations, and you wouldn't see vacant spaces, which says a lot. There's not those kind of vacant stores for you to take your pick, really. So look, the demand is there at the moment. There's not a big supply of space. Certainly if you look at Regent Street and Bond Street, virtually no vacancy at all. Clearly Oxford Street, a slightly different proposition, but there's real serious green shoots there now. In the last couple of years on Oxford Street, we've seen not the same level of historic activity on the street in terms of bigger stores, and now we're seeing that happen again, which is great. That's, I think, helped by the fact we had a cut in business rates, the property tax, if you like. So there's been a good saving there. So that's been a kind of a boost. And deals, we've got seen some new brands come in. So Under Armour have taken the former Zara space just by Oxford Circus. We've seen Reserve take a second store east of Circus. So they've got one west and one east now, which is great news. HMV are going back into their old store west. So there's quite a lot going on. Foot Asylum taking the store east as well. So a lot going on. There's some big deals in the pipeline as well. 3 or 4 big deals shortly to be announced. And of course, one other one to mention, IKEA, who took the former Topshop site right at the Circus. Going to be trading 80,000 square foot space right in the city centre. So that's a pretty big moment as well for retail shopping in central London.
Yeah. So let me think here. So we're talking about IKEA, which is the home. We've talked about apparel.
Yeah.
Would you say primarily sort of apparel and accessories, you would say those are probably the dominant categories that are expanding right now?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, I've got a subcategory like call out athleisure and sportswear. I mean, there's a huge amount of activity in that space. Under Armour opening up, Nike, Adidas taking spaces. On Running opening on Regent Street earlier in the year, which looks fantastic. They're sitting next to Gymshark, who took the former J. Crew space on Regent. And pleased to say we've just signed a deal for Alo Yoga as their flagship store on Regent Street, which will open up next year, which is going to be, I'm very excited about.
Yeah, that's a great one. So, okay. So I'm thinking now about where these brands are coming from. IKEA is Nordic. We talked about what you mentioned, Under Armour, which is US, Alo's US. Are there any home brands that are expanding right now, or is it really mostly international?
Oh, definitely. I mean, we're seeing, mentioning Frasers with Sports Direct, JD Sports. Again, that sports category, quite expansive. So yeah, it's certainly in that on the domestic market, there's brands that are expanding as well.
Gotcha. Okay, great. So another topic which in retail is kind of subdued right now is new construction. Definitely here in the US, but in many places around the world, not a whole lot of new construction or retail redevelopment either. I mean, some mixed use concepts that have a retail component, but anyway, What is there any new retail coming online in or around the city of London?
Yeah, I mean, look, a couple of quite a few notable developments calling them out. Look, we know the story on the challenges that department stores are facing. Right smack bang in the middle of Oxford Street, we've got the Frasers, House of Fraser, former House of Fraser, and Debenhams redevelopments there, which are, it's a great sign to see people in the investment that's going into these buildings, mixed use buildings, they'll break up the retail, so you'll get retail at retail and leisure, ground, basement, and first floor, and offices in the on the upper floors. So yeah, those are two very kind of notable developments. Aside from obviously the IKEA we talked about. And then on Oxford Street, the Phoenix Departments, former Phoenix, at some stage next year, they'll start looking at splitting that space up to create some amazing retail flagship stores and redevelop the upper parts as well. So yeah, quite a bit of activity centrally going on in the retail space at the moment.
I was going out. Go ahead.
And I was just going to say that with Phoenix, those stores coming online, the timing's right. Demand, as I said earlier, there's kind of demand from brands for the West End, and particularly the luxury sector is very strong at the moment. So they're timing it right with the Phoenix. You've seen quite a shift on Bond, particularly from the southern end, brands wanting to move up the street to the middle section. So we've seen Gucci open an amazing store close by in that middle section. There's been a record deal done by Saint Laurent Kering Group just towards the southern end of the street. So we're seeing some serious activity at the moment in that sector as well.
Interesting. So I don't know Bond Street very well. Why are people wanting to move? You said they're moving toward the middle. Is that why is that the hot spot?
Well, I think there's been I think Gucci's been a bit of a catalyst, but already right. We had Balenciaga, Celine, Alaya, those types of brands already there. So I think, and just immediately south of that block, Hermes, Chanel, Dior, LV, Burberry. So the shift has gone up the street. Some of the spaces were bigger to accommodate the full Maison offer. So we've seen that kind of move there. We did a deal earlier in the year with Moncler, who've also taken a store in that part of the street. But yeah, that's not to say the Southern End. There's still some good demand there. Rolex have upsized to a bigger store at that southern end of the street. So we'll perhaps see more accessories, watch brands taking positions in the southern end of the street, and we'll see some of those kind of bigger Maison apparel, the top tier luxury brands going to that middle section. And then amazingly, finally we've seen the Elizabeth line open after obviously many years of delays, and the impact of that has been quite significant to the northern end of Bond Street. So, again, if we were on that virtual walk around town that we were talking about, if we'd been doing that 2 or 3 years ago, you would have seen that northern end of the street, not to be too dramatic, but a bit of a wasteland in terms of retail. But today, we're really seeing some quite exciting brands come in. There's been, I don't know, a handful of 7 or 8 new brands gone into that very top section. So D Squared, Bang & Olufsen, George Jensen have taken space, Diptyque. So there's quite a lot of activity in that northern end. So, a lot of deals going on at the moment on Bond Street.
And so for folks who aren't familiar, the Elizabeth line, explain what's new about that.
Well, I'm not going to give you too many of the stats because I can't claim to know them. But I can tell you yesterday when I flew from Amsterdam and landed in London Heathrow, I was at Bond Street within 35 minutes. So, that you can see the impact tube straight into the centre of town. So, quite significant in terms of taking you from one side of London on this brand new tube line to the other side of London. So, east to west, west to east. And that has had an impact, in some of the kind of key stations as well. So I can't remember specifics, but I think they were projecting something like another 25 million visitors annually coming out of Tottenham Court Road tube as off the back of the Elizabeth line opening up. So, that's changed the kind of dynamics of Central quite a lot.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to change topics a little bit. Coming up very soon is the big MAPIC conference,
Yeah.
where folks from all over Europe join forces to come together in France to talk about retail real estate. What do you think is going to be the hot topic at that conference? What are people going to be wanting to talk about?
I think obviously always top of the agenda, sustainability. Looking at fit outs, green leases, those types of topics, of course. I guess on the horizon, where are we going? What's happening? In kind of on the macroeconomic side. Where what's going to happen next year. Recessions, etc. Cost of living crisis, impact potentially there. Some quite big topics there, and I guess think about where to invest, how to invest. Role of store, to against e-com, those kinds of things. So lots of topics to cover, I think.
Is inflation still a strong headwind, do you think, for the consumer in the UK?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's coming off a little bit. Interest rates are now being held for the moment, but and I think we'll see them inflation come off a little bit. But yeah, it's still relatively high, of course.
Gotcha. Okay, well, let's imagine that you're at Mapic and you're meeting with a new client, and it's a retailer from another country. They're just entering the market. What advice would you give them on where they should be opening stores in the city?
So, I mean, look, like first piece of advice I always give new occupiers who don't know the market, have been to the UK before, is that you need to be aware, on top of a rent, you have to pay business rates as well, which gives you another, as we would have said historically, 50% on top of your rent. So, it's a bit of a call out immediately. When I tell you that the rent's this, you need to be aware that you've got another 35 to 50% on top.
Is that a tax?
Yeah, it's a property tax. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's number one. So we obviously alert them to that first of all, and then as we talk about entering the market, it's just understanding brand positioning, what the objectives of the company is in terms of what the store needs to achieve. The push and pull of being commercial, getting the footfall, to making sure you've got the right brand adjacencies and those kinds of things. London West End, very very compact. You can walk from Bond Street to Regent Street in a matter of 3 minutes, and then Regent into Soho to Covent Garden in 12 minutes. So it's whilst it's compact. There's lots of different kind of characteristics of the individual locations and places. So understanding how they interact, where the overlaps are in terms of retail locations and those kinds of things are quite important to get into the detail of.
If a retailer is purely concerned about footfall, is it Oxford Street? Is that where the most foot traffic would be?
Yeah, Oxford Street is where you benefit from the most footfall, but the characteristics of the shop are UK domestics, some internationals, versus somewhere like Bond Street, which quite obviously is a high international shopper, to versus Regent Street, which is like a probably 50-50 split type of thing. So, and all different kind of nationalities, of course, as well.
One of the other things too that here in the States that we talk about a lot when we talk about urban retail is the return to office, and office workers just aren't back in the office 5 days a week like they were in 2019. Is it similar in UK, or is it there been more of a return to the office?
I mean, it's definitely. I think we're further ahead than US. certainly centrally back to nearly 4 days, I would say. Yeah, I mean that's where I am. I'm about up to 4 days now. So yeah, and that that is a London. London's been suffering a little bit from that, and we've found like a crunch in terms of transport. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, restaurants are busier, bars are busier, all those things. But it's nice to kind of spread that out a little bit. So yeah, I think we're closer to 4 now.
Yeah. That's not bad. I know, I was looking at some of the numbers recently, and I think in New York, maybe, I don't know, like the average might be 3.5 days a week. But, you go into an office in a place like New York on a Monday, not a lot of people. Friday, nobody's there. Friday afternoon, it's echoes, throughout the hallways. Whereas it's funny, before the pandemic, a lot of times people would stay late, people go happy hour together. It's like just a different thing. I mean, it's not even good or bad. It's just a new normal we're still figuring it out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So you being the retail expert, tell me where personally, in your own personal time, where's your favorite place to shop?
That is a tricky question, but I would say that Regent Street, you're pretty sport with the choice of brands, the retail offering. Always love doing a lot of work on the street, so I'm a bit biased, but I love that street. A weekend shopping day up to Marylebone is always fantastic. Good coffee, get a good coffee. Some great boutiques up there, nice lunch, etc. So you can easily while your day away up there. And then Soho, love Soho. Again, the office is right there, so I had plenty of opportunity to explore the retail, restaurants and bars around there as well.
All right, so we're out shopping. Where are we going to eat? Give me a good food recommendation.
Right. So this is not hypothetical. Next time you're in London, I'll take you there. So I went to a place called Mountain on Beak Street a couple of weeks ago with a client. Fantastic. I think it's based around loosely around the concept of kind of alpine cuisine, but really great food. So you and I are going to go there when you're next over. So that's definitely one. And then old favourite, Duck and Rice on Berwick Street is another brilliant restaurant as well.
So Duck and Rice, that's got to be Chinese, right?
Chinese food, and then they brew their own beer on site as well. So that's
oh my gosh,
it's a good combo.
That perfect. Love it.
So we're going there, are we?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if we do 2 meals, Duck and Rice, then Mountain, but definitely no matter what, Duck and Rice. That sounds awesome. So Mark, our time has just flown by. I just want to thank you so much for joining me today. This has been just a fascinating conversation, and I'm looking forward to personally exploring some of these places that we've been talking about in the near future.
Well, thanks for having me on, James. It's been great to talk. Appreciate it.
Excellent. And just a reminder, if you want to check out every episode of Everything We Know, Everything We Know about retail, you can head on over to everythingweknow.show. We also have an audio podcast with much, much more than that. We do weekly audio interview episodes. The show's called Where We Buy, and you can find it on any podcast app or head on over to wherewebuy.show. We also write many, and I mean many, research reports about a bunch of commercial real estate topics, and they're available for download over at jll.com. So this show is called Everything We Know About Retail. What did I learn about retail today? I think I learned that I really, really want to go to London and shop and learn more. I knew a little bit, I've been a couple of times, so I know a few of the places Mark's talking about, but I feel like there's just so much more depth to the retail market in London that I just need to explore. So that's everything we know about retail. If you want to learn even more about everything we know about retail, you can join us here again on next week's episode.